time for us to go into what the budget that was presented represents for all of us as Ghanaians. Let's go into that. And joining me in studio is our research and data analyst here. I join you, Isaac Kofi Ejay. He's already been here. We will also be speaking to other people who are joining us via Zoom, people who really understand what the issues are with the economy. Kofi, I mean, yesterday we were here in the morning discussing what we expected the finance minister will touch on. Did those come to pass? What more is contained in this budget?
In fact, I would say that about 90% of the things we said the finance minister was going to touch on, indeed, he touched on them. So he gave us a clear indication of when he thinks the COVID-19 levy will go. We'll talk more on that. He spoke about the return to the debt market or the bonds market. He spoke about that, told the success story of the economy, and he actually did that. And in fact, he also made mention or spoke about the wage bill, which was so important going into this year's budget. And in fact, on PM Express, gave further and better details on stored projects, the Big Push initiative, roles that will benefit from the current allocation and what have you. But what we learned yesterday from that mid-year budget review was that he was very clear that he doesn't need additional funding. So he's not going to request for supplementary budget for 2025. It simply means that he's going to stay within the 291 billion Ghana cedis appropriation that was sent to Parliament in March. But one thing we are also learning from the data we've seen so far and what he said yesterday is that revenue has been revised upward to 229 billion Ghana cedis from the 227 billion earlier projected in the main budget. What does it do? This will reduce the deficit that in the appropriation hit more than 66 billion Ghana cedis. So what this is going to do is that the new revenue handles will possibly close the gap. And then also he talked about, other things that, we have to focus on. But in terms of the stored projects, we will do more analysis on that. Okay. But the additional revenue, which is about 2.9 billion, is what yesterday was very important to put across. So, because once you decide to keep your expenditure the same and increase revenue, what happens is that your budget deficit is going to go, down. And we need to go through the deficit. Currently, he is quoting at 40.5 billion Ghana cedis. But if you go into the appropriation proper and you do the analysis, you will see that the real deficit is more than this figure. It's about 60 billion Ghana, more than 60 billion Ghana cedis if you do the real calculation, because appropriation in terms of expenditure is about 291 billion versus currently 229 billion in revenue. Definitely your deficit will exceed 60 billion.
So, but he said, so if it is 60 billion, why are they telling us it's 40 billion? Could there be an explanation?
Well, it's not wrong. It depends on the accounting tangent that you choose to stand on, right? If you decide to take away arrears clearance and amortization, definitely the deficit will come down.
But are these expenditures? Or
actually expenditure, and they form part of the real appropriation. So, Setekpe will tell you that if you really want to understand the budget, go to the appropriation and not the one without amortization and expenditure. Because we have done that analysis and we've realized that if you do the real appropriation, deficit is more than this 40.5 billion. It's in excess of 60 billion Ghana cedis. Because the first one that he presented to Parliament in March, we did a calculation and we got a deficit of close to 66 billion Ghana cedis. And so if you add 2.9 billion revenue to it, that will reduce the deficit to some, let's say, 63 billion Ghana cedis. That's about $6.3 billion that we are talking about in deficit.
But mustn't we be worried if we are now being told it is 60 when it is actually 60? over 60.
That's what I'm saying, that he's not wrong to quote 40.5 because he is not looking at the deficits, including amortization and arrears clearance, because he's already made a point that if you look at the amortization aspect or the arrears clearance aspect, there are contracts or arrears that they have to pay that he thinks that auditing must be done.
Okay.
And already he has earmarked 13 billion Ghana cedis to pay arrears this year. But his concern is that if he looks at the data, the outstanding arrears that we have to clear was close to 68 billion Ghana cedis, and some form of auditing must be done before he commits money into paying. But all we are saying is that if you add what exists in the appropriation, we could have a budget deficit which is close to 63 billion Ghana cedis that will possibly be paid in 2025. But he said this. He says, prudent debt management exchange rate appreciation has resulted in significant improvement in Ghana's debt profile. And Kojo, you remember, we did the projection somewhere March, before the budget was read, I think somewhere April, that looking at how the cedi was appreciating, we were expecting that by the first half of the year, Ghana's debt stock should go down by some 100 billion Ghana cedis. Yesterday, he actually affirmed that projection we did, and he said it actually went down by 113.7 billion Ghana cedis. That is very significant. In fact, if you do the math, what you see is that this is even bigger than the breathing space we got by doing the debt exchange program. So we gave people haircuts and what have you, but the savings we had was nowhere close to 114 billion Ghana cedis. It tells you that the entire economy revolves around exchange rate. Once you keep exchange rate in check, the energy sector will be stable, your debt situation will improve and all of that. So if you are able to solve the exchange rate situation, definitely what happens is that it will affect all other indicators, especially inflation, because of the pass-through effects of exchange rate and the fact that we depend so much on imports. And our import bill is on average about 13 to 14 billion dollars every year. So if you're able to tackle exchange rate, definitely all other economic indicators will follow. It's not as simple as that, but in fact, that is what the regression actually says. Yesterday, he also says that the public debt to GDP ratio at the end of June 2025 was 43.8%. This is unprecedented. Looking at where we've come so far, the restructuring we've done, at a point, our debt to GDP ratio, if you consider all other factors, was in excess of 100% to our GDP. In fact, it means that in terms of our production as a country, if we decide to use everything to pay debt 2 or 3 years ago, it would not have been possible because it was somewhere around 114%. But after the restructuring, we hit some 61.8%. That was a massive improvement. But now we are talking about 43.8%, not because of restructuring, not because we are not borrowing, but it's simply because the exchange rate situation has improved.
But are we borrowing?
Yeah, we are borrowing, but he said that we are borrowing, I want to use the word wisely, or we are borrowing as and when we need that money. But if you domestically, but we all know what happened, 3 or 4 years ago, where Eurobonds were the order of the day, get 3 billion, we're issuing 0% coupon rate and all of that. What happens is that once you begin to add dollar debt and your exchange rate begins to fail you, without even adding more debt, without even borrowing, you add more debt, because the finance minister in the 2023 budget had told us that in 2022, they added more than 90 billion Ghana cedis to the debt stock, not because they borrowed, but because the exchange rate failed them. So it's not surprising to see the same sort of, story playing out here, but this time around, it's appreciation of the cedi. And what is that saving us? 113 billion Ghana cedis in reducing our debt stock. Now, you can look at the curve this way. This is where the success story, the entire success story is coming from. And he has said that gold board is big in this success story, but not the sole reason why we are seeing it. But he says currently we are getting more inflows from the gold board initiative, which means that Bank of Ghana now has the power to come into the market to intervene. Yesterday, when Evans asked him about intervention, he said, there's nothing wrong. If Bank of Ghana has what it takes and it's not burning reserve to keep the exchange rate afloat, there's nothing wrong with it. The governor himself, a week ago, has also said that, well, where is the sin? If the IMF wants us to add $400 million to our debt, our reserve, and we have managed to add more than $2 billion, why can't we intervene in the market when people need the forex? And so currently what is happening is that the Bank of Ghana has both the rates and the dollar. So they are able to control what happens in the black market. Because once Bank of Ghana has the supply, it actually helps in stabilizing the cedi. Yesterday, he gave a clear plan on what they will do to keep the cedi afloat for the remaining part of the year, the second half of the year. And he said he is very confident that the appreciation we have seen will be sustained. And these are the numbers, not just against the dollar, but against other other major trading currencies, the pound, the euro, all of them appreciating so much in the first half of the year. One success story that yesterday he was very particular about is inflation. But many have said that, well, we are not happy yet. Why? Because inflation is 13.7%, but your policy rate is still 28%. The business community are calling that cut rate. And yesterday we saw Trump and Jerome Powell in that famous video where he said, I want you to cut rates. Why? Because Trump understands the importance of cutting rates. And businesses are also aware that once you cut the monetary policy rate, that is when the current, joy we are seeing, the inflation, going towards will make sense because cost of borrowing will go down. And once you begin to make the VAT more attractive and less burdensome, and you reduce the cost of borrowing, private sector can now lead the 24-hour economy. But we can't celebrate yet.
Sorry, but is it not the fear of the people who manage this to say, when you lower the rate, it could then affect even the inflation you are trying to reduce, and that's why we say let's target it or maintain it at a certain point. So if they reduce the rate, won't it affect the inflation?
But inflation doesn't just work alone. It has to work with the policy rate. And usually they move in a tangent form, like they are more tangential, if not asymptotic. But what we have seen is the wide, it's not about just reducing, but there is a gap between the inflation rate and the policy rate, where you have policy rates around 28%, and inflation rate around 13.7. It shows some of the imbalances and the structural challenges the Ghanaian economy still has. It means that once you begin to even lower monetary policy rates, you may have all other, indicators distorting because of that cascading effect that could bring. But once you are able to build a very good foundation and the fundamentals are very good, you can decide to then close the gap between monetary policy rates and inflation and lower the cost of borrowing for private persons to enjoy capital.
Okay.
Fuel prices was one of the success stories, but there's more.
Yeah. For me, let me bring in Mary Kwateng Dako, who is Associate Director Tax Services at PwC. Mary, grateful for you to join us here. Now, from where we are, the call is that inflation is doing well. Reduce the rate so that private sector can then join in making the 24-hour economic policy a reality. Where do you stand on that debate, that we reduce or we try to maintain how the inflation is performing?
I would say that when we talk about inflation, we are talking about the prices of goods on the market, right? And interest rate is also the rate at which we are borrowing from the central bank. Yeah. You would expect that these rates would at least move in the same direction at some point. Because if they are too wide apart, it means that the inflation in the economy, the businesses will actually not be benefiting from the trend of prices falling. It means that they will still be borrowing at a very high rate. If they borrow at a high rate, what it also means is that they are going to pass on that cost on their goods, their services, or whatever they are supplying. And eventually, we, the household, we, the individuals, we are the ones who are going to bear the brunt of those high prices. And eventually, if you don't take care, if you don't manage these two very well, it means that it's going to eventually also come and affect inflation. Because you are borrowing at a high rate, you can't absorb the cost. You have to pass it on to consumers.
Okay.
As you pass it on to consumers, then that also in turn affects inflation.
Yeah.
Then inflation also begins to, go high. So I'll say it's a delicate balance that the Bank of Ghana would need to maintain. If not done properly, even the gains that we are seeing with inflation going down and even the targeted inflation at the end of the year of 11.9% will not be achievable.
I'm told the IMF is quoting 8% at end of year.
Yesterday was confident that by the end of the year we could hit single digits.
Okay.
On PM Express, he said that yesterday.
So that will be interesting to see. But it means that the Bank of Ghana has that responsibility to ensure, you're giving respite to industries, but you're also not pushing inflation out of the way, which will then, bring us back to where we don't want to be. Interesting. But aside this, what was your takeaway from the budget yesterday?
So my takeaway from the budget yesterday was that no new taxes were imposed on Ghanaians. I think Ghanaians have had to do with so many taxes, and so everybody was a bit cautious and worried that we're going to see new taxes being imposed. The good thing was that there were no new taxes or no new tax handles imposed. It's rather VAT that we were really hoping that there will be a firm conclusion or a firm direction with the reform, because in the 2025 budget that was read in March, the minister mentioned that they have to undertake a reform to make sure that the whole VAT system is restructured, because indeed our VAT system is very complex. We can't even tell whether it's a sales tax regime or it's a VAT regime or it's a hybrid. Like it's very complex.
Actually hybrid.
And even it's hybrid. And even the way that it is calculated is also very complex. It's cumbersome. Even for tax consultants, it's difficult for them to apply it. How much more the ordinary person on the street?
That's the thing.
It is difficult, to be honest. So we were really hoping that there will be a bill that would reform it. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. So we understand that after the consultation and then the reform, now they are at the stage of doing sensitization and also getting feedback from businesses. So we're really hoping that that can be done quickly. And as promised, in October, we are going to see the bill. And then I guess it would have to be pushed to January 2026 for the implementation of the reform. But that is what I was really hoping for, that we are going to see something along those lines. But unfortunately, it did not happen. But the other good side of it is that there were no new taxes imposed on the Ghanaians and even the business, because businesses have had to deal with so many taxes in the past. And some businesses have struggled. Some have even left the country on account of, the tough economic environment that they were operating under.
Interesting. So when it comes to the VAT that you are looking forward to, what do you expect it must be? Yesterday I was talking to Guta, and he was talking about the flat rate, and giving them, for example, that as traders, they will know that at the end of it, this is how much we are paying. What do you expect that particular, reconstruction or the new thing, reform about VAT should be?
Okay. So first of all, currently, the way our VAT system works is that, so for instance, if you have an item with a cost of 100, you need to apply the VAT. What happens is that you need to, first of all, apply the levies, which is in all 6%. So we have the National Health Insurance levy of 2.5%. We have the Ghana Education Trust Fund levy of another 2.5%. Yes. Then we have the COVID-19 levy of 1%.
1%, yes.
This would apply on the base of 100. And then on top of that, you apply the VAT of 15%.
15%.
So tax on tax.
Tax on tax, exactly. So if you look at it, by the time you finish calculating the price, the VAT rate is 21.9%, which is very high. And it also has an inflationary impact, because it's cascades. And that 6% is not even deductible for businesses. What happens? It means that they will also pass on that cost to you and I as consumers. So that alone is high. So what I'm expecting to see by way of reform, which the minister also mentioned, is that the way the VAT works is going to change, such that we will not be calculating tax on tax. It's going to be simplified.
Okay.
We are going to have a unified VAT rate, which will apply on the items that are being, sold.
Okay.
And that will make it simpler.
But the unified should also not be too much, right?
Yeah. So
No, the unified would also mean, once you change even the way the levies are calculated in itself,
Yes.
the effective VAT rates will fall.
down. So about
That
20%,
alone,
that's the
exactly.
Yeah,
that alone,
that's
be a-
what you guys
a-
did, right?
Yes.
But like I say, from 21.9 to 20%.
Kojo, if you
Is that
That is one. Remember that they are also proposing to abolish the COVID-19 levy.
yes.
Yes.
So from 21.9%, you take out that 1% or so, it comes to 20%. It's still high.
Very.
It is still high, even when we compare ourselves to our neighbors around. So that is something that I'm hoping that there would also be some reduction in the rates.
So can they charge single digit
Because
VAT
Kojo,
rate?
Single digit, forget.
the true
That one is not
VAT
going to be possible.
the true VAT is 15%.
Okay.
Yep.
It is the NHIL, the COVID-19 levy, and the remaining one is what gets fund is what makes it at 21.9%. So you will come back to more analysis.
Okay, all right. Let me bring in Dr. Kawo. Sharam Kawo is a senior lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School, University of Cape Coast, really. I wanted to give him the University of Ghana. Doc, I'm grateful to you for joining us here. Now, we're having a discussion about the VAT regime, for example. She has told me what her expectations are in terms of the reform that is coming. What is your own expectation in terms of the reform that we do expect from government in terms of the VAT regime?
I expect that the VAT will be reformed in such a way that it will be affordable. If the rates are affordable, we're not going to see a lot of businesses trying to avoid the payment of the tax. As has been explained by my colleagues in the studio, the VAT rate is very high, and we are taxing the tax that we pay. And so hearing the minister telling us that he is going to abolish the COVID levy, and then the amount of tax that we're going to pay will be harmonized, is a welcoming news. And we also hope that the rates that will be paid by the businesses will go down. And when we are able to reduce the rate, we encourage compliance. Once there is compliance, everything will be fine. I also would want to see not only the rate, which is financially related, but the attitude of those who collect the tax.
Okay.
Because there are instances where businesses will not want to pay the tax. So you have the Ghana Revenue Authority sending people to go and sit in the offices of these businesses and ensure that the taxes are paid. These individuals will also connive with the businesses and then avoid the payment of the VAT. So the attitudinal change is also very important.
Okay, that's Doctor. But aside that, what's your main takeaways from the budget of yesterday?
Yeah, one of my main takeaway from the budget is the NIB recapitalization.
Okay.
We have been told that the NIB had capital adequacy ratio of negative 53%, and that is very bad. And so the transfers that have been done from Nestle, the 400 and something million that have been pushed, cash that has been pushed into it, and the minister telling us that they are hoping to list NIB on the Ghana Stock Exchange is a big boost for the financial sector. Jobs have been saved in that particular regard. Secondly, that all contracts in Ghana are going to be denominated in the Ghana city. Businesses and individuals are not going to price in the dollar. And so that should go around in terms of real estate sales, a hotel, accommodation, and any type of business that we have. We need to get the law enforcement agencies to make sure that this thing comes to reality.
But on that, he said the government contract will be denominated in cedis. Does that
Yes.
mean that if I have my private estate or I have my hotel, I am bound by that to say I'm charging in cities?
Yes, you are bound by that particular one, that if you have your real estate, charge in Ghana cedis. If you have hotel, charge in Ghana cedis. So your rates are not going to be quoted in dollars, and then at any point in time that the rate change, you also change. And looking at where we are going currently, that will be very good for the businesses, because if the exchange rate continues to stabilize and you appreciate, the CD continues to appreciate, and you continue to charge in dollars, you are the one who are going to lose. Businesses try to be much faster. They want to be smart and outsmart the system. At a point in time in 2025, those who are dealing in cars that price the cars in dollars, they've refused to price the cars in dollars. They are pricing in Ghana cedis. So there is the need for us to enforce this particular regime. I can set an example of South Africa. You go to South Africa and you cannot buy anything in any other currency apart from the South African rand. So we can also do the same thing in Ghana. And once we do it, the system goes up. So there is the need for us to ensure that we go with these policy initiatives and make sure that the law bites, the enforcement agencies do their work well. Those are my two big takeaways from the review that we had yesterday.
But Doc, on the side of the dollar, quoting items in cedis, aren't we going to also hurt ourselves? Because once you force people to quote in cedis, even though they want to quote in dollars, people will come up with their own rates. Because if you are forcing me to quote my goods in cedis, I can still use a dollar rate of 14 and price. So if you are really stabilizing the CD, why care about what people are doing? They can go ahead and quote in dollars since you have a very stable currency.
Yeah, you are very right in that respect. But then when you look at the Forex market, it's very fluid. We can only sustain our Forex gains that we are making now by being disciplined. Fiscal and monetary policy, the marriage between the two are working effectively. And we also trying to ensure that the inflation rate is kept to a minimum level. When those things work well and the system is working and individuals will not price items on the market anyhow, that will be very good for us. But we stay in an economy where the informal sector is much dominant than the formal sector. And that is where we have a bit of a challenge. So you can make sure that your exchange rate, the inflation rate, the policy rate, and all those things are minimal. But we'll still have individuals that will price at their own level. And we cannot allow that to continue. When you use other currencies, you are giving value to the currency that you are using, and we cannot continue in that particular regard. That is why countries that have stable currencies over time will make sure that everything is done in their own currency. Even our neighboring country, Togo, you cannot go and pay any other thing in this apart from the CFA franc. That is what they do, and their currency has been stable for a longer period of time. So once other countries are doing it, patriotism is needed to make sure that we do what we want to do. In terms of the people trying to quote their own rate and all those things, the market forces will play against you. Because when the prices are up and then your competitor is quoting the price that is much lower, businesses will move to that. And we have a lot of competition in markets. So that can also...
So you made a very important point that when the city started appreciating, nobody forced businesses to start quoting their wares in cities. So if you are talking about market forces, why not allow those same market forces to determine where people want to go, but to compel people to say that quote in cities when they really want to quote in dollars to make sure that they have value for money. If they decide to quote in dollars and the city begins to stabilize, it's their own law. So why force them?
You see, we have the the forces of the market trying to determine the prices of goods and services in the market. But there are certain goods that are very precious. And so in terms of real estate, hotel accommodation, buying of luxury vehicles or any car that you are going to get, these are not things that are very common that we can all get. And they are not very open to every kind of income holder. And so government intervention in these areas in terms of policy is very important to ensure that there is a fair playing ground for everybody. If you allow that to happen, the one who is selling provisions in the stores, the businesses that are trying to manufacture, if they all decide that this is what they are going to do, there will be indiscipline in the market, and that is not going to be good. Government needs to discipline the market and so that everybody will fall in line. That is why we have enacted the laws of the country, and we just have to make sure that we follow these laws that we have. That is it. And you'll notice that sometimes the rates are quoted for even some government contracts, and then they decide to quote a particular rate, not the current rate that is happening. So if we go by that particular policy that quote in Ghana cedis, and if there is the need for you to review, you review and inform your consumers about the changes that you have made. Okay. Everything will be fine.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Thanks to you. But let's come into the studio and bringing our lady here, who's also, been talking to us about her take on the other things. But Mary, in terms of the dollar and the decision to say price in Ghana, I didn't understand it to mean even, I don't want to mention any hotels name, but hotels now are compelled to then charge in Ghana cedis. As Kofi was asking, should we just allow the market forces to work, or we should compel people to say compulsorily price in Ghana cedis?
I believe those two are, connected largely. But I also believe that if we are able to sustain the gains that we have seen in the appreciation of the cedi, people will not need to find other currencies as a store of value. Yeah. Because that's what people are doing. Some actually get their salaries, convert it to dollars. That was previously. And then just save it. And that alone will give you some appreciation. Okay. But now that the cedi is, gaining and it is strong, you will not need to, invest. Yeah, you will not need to, put your value in dollars or in another currency. The cedi itself is strong enough. Now, what we are hoping and praying for is that these gains will be sustained. We've seen 6 months of, it's been, it's appreciating.
Hopefully, Kofi, give us the graph again so we can really follow.
If y'all can bring back, yes.
So that's it, right? So in January, it was 14.7. Yep. It jumped to 15.38 in February, 15.54 in March. It came to 15.35 in April, May. Yeah. May was 13.45. July, it is 10.5. But there's a bit of an appreciation there, right? But it's a slight. Yep. Yeah, so, and now they say it is because of gold board. So as long as gold board exists, it means that we'll see a downward trend.
Hopefully.
You also would be counting on gold prices on the international space to still make the gold board work, right? Because
exactly.
you are targeting $1 billion every month to stabilize the cedi. So your hope is that gold prices will still be on the high, still be maybe between $2,800 and $3,000, with the hope that if you are able to stay within this range, you get more from gold board, then to give to the Bank of Ghana to do some of the intervention and also to meet the demand situation. And the hope is that once that is done and you are able to get $1 billion every month, it should be fine, right?
Okay, but let's look at the big push. I mean, roads, important. We all need good roads. I've always said that if Ghanaians are driving on good roads, we will pay any amount of toll. I don't know.
Thank you.
As for me, I'll pay.
Agreed.
I'll pay. Because if my car I'm driving on good road, we're not going to the shop anytime, and you say, okay, Salon car, pay this amount, I will.
Yeah.
So hearing that the big push for the next 2 years is dedicated to constructing roads, it's good. What will be the impact of that on, say, inflation? I've heard people say that when people have spending power, it pushes inflation. I don't know how you, the economists, do it, but do we see the big push agenda pushing inflation anywhere? What will be the impact of the big push on the economy, the larger economy itself? Okay,
so on the roads, I believe that there's still a lot that we need to do, especially even if you go to Tema, the industrial area, which is where a lot of our production, I would say, comes from. Okay. The roads are not in good shape, and there is a lot that needs to be done there. The roads leading to our houses, there's a lot that needs to be done there. But I guess we can...
And sorry, I don't cut you, but if you go to farming communities, this year I'm told that Agric posted 6.6% in the first half of the year. Yes, which means that, and according to the finance minister, it is the leading contributor to our GDP the first half of the year.
Before you even come back, could you imagine you have a dual road from here to Takoradi? I'm sure some people will stay in Takoradi and come to work.
Exactly.
You know, so the farming communities are critical in this. And I've heard that 1/6 constituencies that are in dire need of roads are being captured under the big push.
Sampled by the roads minister in his tour. Those constituencies.
It means that food can come to the market easily. So in all of that, would then have impact on inflation, right? Because if we get food easily accessible to the market, food inflation will not rise that much. Because the cost of transportation will come down. So now take your analysis.
So the road construction, the road network is very, very important, and it also plays a key role in inflation. So imagine that whatever produce the farmers harvest, imagine it seamlessly getting to Accra for you and I to purchase. And you know that there is also a significant difference between buying something at the farm gates versus buying it at the market. The significant contributor is basically transportation. And if the roads are bad, it makes it even more expensive to get these items to Accra. That is, if they are even able to get to Accra. Most of them get rotten at the farms. That means that only a few get to Accra. And the few get to Accra, because a lot of people are also chasing its demand and supply rules, it means that the prices of that would also go up. So we need these road networks to be done to be able to bring the produce or the items to where they are needed. And if they get there also on time and people get what they need, inflation will be controlled and it would also reduce. So I think it's a big thing that needs to happen.
So big push can bring down the inflation. Such that when my Hunter West constituency has all of our roads done, we can move fish from Cape 3 Point, from Akweda, from Disco to Agona Nkwanta, and we'll buy fish cheaper than we are buying now. We can move cassava oil palm from Asemko, we can move it from Akitechi, and all of those communities, to the market center. So, in fact, we are looking forward to that. But again, it has to do with commitment, right? Because if you wanted to make a point, then
commitment and the money involved is so important. So far, the finance minister yesterday explained that any form of gains or windfall we'll get, we'll push it to the big push. And in fact, we shouldn't forget that we've had year of roads before. And if you are a regular user of the Spintex bypass, and let's say the new Spintex flyover, you see how important that road is. So it tells you that if government is investing in road, it doesn't just affect inflation. We usually will care so much about inflation, but productivity is so important. How people move between cities and how people move between towns, also very important. And so to have that sort of commitment to construct roads is so important. But the key thing is that you have about 30 billion Ghana cedis in road arrears and all owed by Cocoa Board. I don't know, but I pray and I hope that this big push agenda that we are talking about, we don't add cocoa roads, because we all know how that vehicle called Cocoa Roads has actually slapped debt on the state. Because how can you have arrears of close to about 68 billion and more than half is coming from the road sector? Because one thing we know is that government gives out contracts, and then people start constructing roads. They don't do the roads with their own money. They don't construct the roads with their own money. They go to the banks to go and borrow. If they go to the banks to go and borrow and government doesn't pay them in time, what happens? Non-performing loan ratio goes up. Currently, I always say this, with the commercial banks that we have, every 100 cedis worth of loans that they give out, they are not able to recover about 27 cedis or 20 cedis of that. So it means that if government is paying, is clearing arrears, focusing on roads, paying contractors, it doesn't just solve an economic problem, but it also saves the banking sector, which struggles with non-performing loan ratio.
Let's go back to your smart wall.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a success story also in the energy sector. The energy sector, our energy sector over the years has become a debt-making machine. And in fact, the IMF program is really focused on the energy sector because of the current mix we have, where about 70% is coming from independent power producers. Many have said it's a big national security threat. It means that in an instance where we can't pay these IPPs, the country will be in doomsday. But the hope is that once you're able to keep the cedi stable, you'll be able to pay fuel supplies, you'll be able to pay IPPs, and they will generate, and the power will stay stable. But I think that going into the second half of the year, one thing that will be so important is how to keep the light on, because you need energy to run a stable economy.
Interesting. So that's it. But Carl, we didn't come to you for your take on the big push. Dr. Carl, I mean, you are in Cape Coast. I'm sure if the road from Cape Coast to Accra is dualized, it will take you, say, an hour to get to Accra to do business and go back. What's your own view about how big push can then help transform the economy of Ghana?
Okay, thank you very much. As you've stated, if the roads are good, and we're currently having the construction of the road from Bujumburam to Winneba, and then looking at it is a good one that we have. You know, the concept of the big push is enshrined in economics. That says that when you have coordinated and large-scale investment in multiple sectors of your economy, it boosts economic growth that you have. And that has been practiced in several countries around the world, and that is where they work. The construction in terms of roads, not only roads, but you are investing in industry, you are investing in the human resource, and you are making sure that everything that you are doing it on a larger scale to be well. The roads, when they are constructed,
it's 9 hours.
One, you are going to create a lot of market. You open the place to businesses that are going to be established. You will add value to the lands around the area. And then what is going to happen is that the roads are good, goods are going to be seamlessly transported to the market, and that will make sure that the prices are down, and that goes to reduce inflation that we have. The big push alone can serve as a source of job creation for a number of Ghanaians that we have. When these businesses are the ones who are Ghanaian companies, and they are creating the jobs that we have. And we will also have people having saved money from repairs in cars and all those things. I have used the Accra Road within this month like 2 times, and my car is currently at the repairs because the roads are very terrible. And so when we have good roads that are there, you realize that your disposable income is higher, and you can go ahead and then buy goods at the farm gate. Not only transportation that is causing it, the market women and men who transport these things from the farm gate to the marketplaces sell at skyrocketing prices, and that is also affecting the rate of inflation that we have. We should also not just say big push, we are constructing roads, but we should construct quality roads, roads that stand the test of time, and then the weather conditions that we have here. We should not construct roads and within 1 year we have potholes on the roads that are even more dangerous. When we construct good roads, it saves lives.
Okay.
The next person that will be dying on the road might be the one that will be something great that will happen to our country. So we make sure that we do these things. Another thing that we can also look at in terms of the big push is that we have a lot of river bodies. Why don't we construct and make those places streams? I was surprised when I heard that the fisheries sector is contributing so much to the growth in the first quarter of the year. What has changed all of a sudden? So the fisheries sector is very important, and we are not told which is it the artisanal fisheries sector or the trawlers that are contributing. But I'm very sure it is the trawlers, because the artisanal fisheries, they are virtually out of business because they are not making the catches that they want to make. But in terms of tuna and other fishes, they are making it in Ghana waters that we have. So if we make the big push something that we all understand, it creates the jobs. It is going to be something big that will happen. But we should not concentrate on only the roads. We talk about agriculture, we talk about industry. It should be linked to the 24-hour economy. And once those things are done, perfect, we are there to go.
Mary, I mean, when government says it will do something great, we'll applaud it. But we've seen in this country so many times when government will say something, but the commitment to do it is something else. Do you have that belief that this government will have that commitment to do whatever it says it will do under the big push?
So, you know, we've discussed about roads, and that's part of expenditure. The question is, where is the money coming from to fund this? If you look at the revenue mobilization or government's domestic revenue and grants, you'd realize that for each of the lines, there was an increment, or government is doing more than it had expected to do. So, for instance, taxes from income and property, they outperform what they were expecting to do. Taxes on goods and services, which covers excise duties, VAT, the levies, they did more than what they were expecting to do. It was only on international trade taxes. That was where there was a shortfall of 1.6 billion. Yeah. So you realize the government is doing well as far as domestic revenue mobilization is concerned. They need to sustain it at least for where they have outperformed where they were expecting. And then for the areas where there was a shortfall, I'm glad that the minister has actually outlaid plans that they're going to follow to make sure that these gaps are actually closed. So we need to make sure that the money is coming in to be able to fund these roads. So government's commitment also boils down to the money. If the funds are available, I don't see why the government will not be able to follow through with its commitment for the big push. Yeah.
Mary Kwating Dako is Associate Director, PwC. Thank you so much for coming through. Dr. Sierra Mkawo is a lecturer at the University of Cape Coast School of Business. And I'm happy about the performance of the agric sector. We haven't seen much from the government side. It tells you that really the main thing is coming from the private players in the agric sector. If that's the case, then government, we have made that case that you need to support private sector players in the sector for us to keep doing whatever we're doing. We've now realized that when we focus on agric, we can really help turn around the economy. This is where my joy is, because it's making a good statement for us players in the agric sector. Thanks to Kofi Ajay, who is our lead research and data analyst here. And thanks to you for staying with us. This is the AM Show. We'll take a break. We'll be back with more. Do stay.